I always say in Spanish, habla por quien no puede hablar, which translates to speak out for the people who cannot speak out. So if you can come out as an atheist, or if you're able to be more open about it, do so.
Welcome to Voices of Deconversion. We share the inspirational stories of deconversion told by former Christians who are now atheist or agnostic. Our stories remind us we're in it together. They encourage us as we discover who we are and help us to embrace who we become. Now here's Steve with today's guest.
Welcome back, everyone, for episode 20. My guest today is an atheist undergraduate student at the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez, where he pursues a Bachelor of Arts in Chemistry. He is the founder and current president of Secular Humanist Association, UPRM, a student group for young atheists and agnostics and all the secular community at his university. The group is the only one of its kind in all of Puerto Rico's public university system, and it works closely with Humanistas Seculares de Puerto Rico, the leading secular organization on the island. His activism focuses mainly in bringing attention to the increasing amount of violations of the separation of church and state in the island's government and guiding the development of more secular student groups in Puerto Rico's other universities. He has a passion for science and philosophy and believes deeply in equal rights for all under the law. It was a pleasure getting to know him, and it was really great to hear of the awesome work that he's doing in Puerto Rico. And one quick note, with Hurricane Irma in the news this week, we just want to say to all our friends in Puerto Rico, we're thinking about you, we're hoping for the best, and stay safe. And now, here's my interview with Gerardo Rivera. Thanks, Gerardo, for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, I actually wanted to start off by asking you about the group that you're a part of. So, I think it's the University of Puerto Rico, is that right?
Yeah, well, my group is located at the University of Puerto Rico. The University of Puerto Rico is obviously the public university system in Puerto Rico. And it has 11 campuses right now. And my group is specifically in the west side of the island at the campus at the municipality of Mayagüez. So it's the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez campus. I founded the group in 2016. I was working on the idea for a year or a year and a half before that, but I actually was able to found it in 2016. I think my motivation to make the group was that when I entered the campus in 2015, I never actually had friends that I can discuss my views on religion and my beliefs with. So I kind of felt alone. So I just wanted to see if I could find people that had the same thoughts as me. And I actually did have a person I study chemistry. So one of my friends and my lab partner, he did study chemistry with me, and he was an atheist, and I didn't know for a lot of time. And it wasn't until we had this meeting for the group, and he actually showed up there, that when I saw him, that I realized, oh, you're an atheist just like me. I didn't know it, and we've had this relationship in the lab for a year, and I never knew that you were an atheist. Like you never know what the people beside you think until you just ask them. And I think these are the type of conversations that people should have more often.
Yeah. No, that's really cool, and I'm glad that you talked about kind of what your motivation was for starting it, because that was something I was going to ask you. And in fact, before we jumped on, I was telling you that's kind of your reasons for starting the group you did are kind of similar to why I started the podcast. Is I kind of felt alone for a while and felt like I was one of the only people I knew who was an atheist. And sometimes I think, as you've probably found, or like you just said, when you put yourself out there and you create a group where you start something, you start to find people, and that's kind of the benefit.
People in the secular community can feel real easily alone, and they lose this sense of community that they had when they were religious, and especially in Christianity, that Christian groups tend to have this really tight community, and they share a lot. So when at least for a lot of people that do come out as atheists or do come out as any type of denomination of secularism, they do lose. I think in many of the cases they lose that sense of community because they lose a lot of friends, or they're just afraid to tell people. So that willingness to be open is a little bit is lost, I think.
Lost in the sense that, like, once you become an atheist, you can't be open. Is that what you mean?
No, no, no. You can be open. What I mean by that is that I think that people tend to keep it to themselves because they think that other people are just going to judge them or they're going to treat them badly,
Yeah.
which does happen a lot, actually. I do know a lot of people that their families treat them not so well as they should, or they're not so understanding. At least, and the secretary, her name is Carla, the secretary for my group. Well, she's a lesbian, and
And
she's gay.
what is the name of the group? The official name
Oh,
of your group?
yeah, the name of the group is Secular Humanist Association at UPRM, which is It stands for University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, your
So
secretary, you were telling me, or the
yeah,
secretary for your group.
the secretary for the group, her name is Carla, and I actually mentioned her to you. Her family, she's not Christian, but her family, and she's an agnostic actually. Her family are santeros. She practiced santeria, which is a Afro-Caribbean religion. It's not voodoo, just in case. It's not voodoo. And well, she's gay. She's a lesbian, and then she's agnostic, so she's not religious. So she does have this double stigma that a lot of people dislike. So if you're gay, and on top of that you're some type of or atheist or agnostic, people are gonna dislike you even more,
Mm-hmm.
which is sad.
Yeah, that makes it really. It adds to the difficulty of kind of navigating being social. I can't.
Yeah.
How big is the group? Since 2016 you started?
Well, we're obviously we're only starting, but we've been received pretty well in the campus. We have around 100 members that at least we've done a lot of activities at conferences, and we always have people. We have around, like I said, 100 people that attend. So there's a lot of people that are interested in these topics of church-state separation and atheism, secularism, secular humanism.
Yeah.
So I think I would approximate it for around 100 people.
Well, that's great. And you started it just about a year ago, it sounds like.
Yes, and
Wow.
every day we're recently working on creating another group on the other side of the island, and another campus, which is the largest campus of all the University of Puerto Rico. So, and it's a more liberal campus. So I really hope that my colleagues over there are going to have success in establishing the group. So they contacted me. They contacted my group so that we could help them and guide them and give them the specifics of what to avoid, what to do, so they can make their group. Hopefully, their group should be set during for the next year. So I hopefully everything will go fine with them, and we're gonna have two groups, at least student groups, because in Puerto Rico there is two major secularist groups. There is Secular Humanists of Puerto Rico, and then there is Atheists of Puerto Rico. So I'm gonna just say in Spanish real quick. The first group is Humanistas Seculares de Puerto Rico, Secular Humanists of Puerto Rico, and the second group is Ateístas de Puerto Rico, Atheists of Puerto Rico. And those are the major secularist groups here. I'm a member of Secular Humanists. I work with them. I actually want you to eventually interview Eva Quiñones, who's the president of the group. She's great. She's also an atheist, and they help me a lot. We're only starting the relationship with Ateístas de Puerto Rico, with the atheist group. We're starting the relationship with them. Hopefully, we're gonna be able to work with them, and it will be a fruitful relationship. Hopefully.
Well, you may not know this, but
Yeah.
a previous guest mentioned Ava, and and his name is Luciano Gonzalez. Do you know?
No, I haven't. I don't think I have actually heard of him. Eva must know because
He
Eva knows
knows.
everybody. Yeah,
Yeah,
she knows everybody. Like
that's cool.
when I'm with her and she just mentions all these names. Well, she's been in this type of activism for wow, a lot of years, at least for 20 years. Even though she wasn't, her group was founded in 2011,
Okay.
but she's been in this game for a long time before that, so she knows a lot of people.
That's awesome. Well, so you consider yourself an atheist, or is there a term that you prefer other than atheist?
No, personally, I do consider myself an atheist. I don't have a problem for people calling me that. Obviously, there's a lot of labels that you can apply because you can be a secular humanist and be an atheist, and you can be a free thinker, you can be a skeptic all at once. And there is such a thing as agnostic atheism.
Hmm.
They're not mutually exclusive. I do know a lot of people, at least one of the advisors for the group. He doesn't like to be labeled as an atheist. He doesn't believe in anything, at least regarding religion. He just says that he wants to avoid the negative connotations that being called an atheist is called. I do get where he's coming from, but I don't actually agree with that because I think
Yeah.
we have a responsibility to respond to people that think that atheism is bad and to try to work towards eliminating that stigma that the word has.
Well, that's great. I think that's the reason I use the word atheist. That's part of the reason.
Yes.
It's the most clear, and most people understand what you kind of mean when you say it. Yeah.
I think the best way to just this reminds me of these pins or these stickers and this message that Freedom from Religion Foundation has. I do have this pin that says friendly neighborhood atheist.
Yeah,
And I think that's the message that people should receive, that they shouldn't think that atheists are just monsters or that we eat children, we eat babies, and we just hateful people. We're normal people. Your neighbor could be an atheist, anybody could be an atheist, so we have to work towards removing that stigma from the word.
yeah. I think that's great. Well, let's jump into your story a little bit. So
Yeah.
tell me about kind of growing up in your childhood. How was Christianity a part of it, and how did it influence you?
Wow. Well, like I mentioned before we got on, I was raised in a pretty interesting under pretty interesting circumstances. Well, my dad, both my parents are Puerto Rican, obviously. Yeah. So my dad was a Jehovah's Witness, which, as a lot of people know, compared to Mormons, you're pretty hardcore, and I don't really agree with a lot of the things they do. So yeah, my dad was a Jehovah's Witness. My mom was a practicing Catholic. So when they got married and they had me, they had to decide in which church they would get married. They were going to get married, and they just compromised, and they ended up getting married in a Presbyterian church.
I think that's pretty funny.
Yeah, it is funny, and then it's even more funny than considering the fact that I ended up being an atheist. So I think we covered all the bases. So yeah, and I was baptized in the Catholic Church when I was a baby, and I was never baptized in the Jehovah's Witnesses way, because that tends to happen when you're older. I think if I'm not mistaken, they tend to baptize people when they're older because they just want them to study and to commit to God, so that then they can have their baptism. So yeah, my father took me to his temple for a lot of years when I was a child. I do remember, I have these memories of me participating. They used to sit us all in this huge hall, and they would have conversations each Saturday about the Bible, and they would pass this mic around so everybody could answer questions that the elders were asking. So yeah, the Jehovah's Witnesses have these like elders, which are always men. There's never women in there, but there's always these elders are the ones that ask questions and they guide you in understanding the Bible. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses do credit themselves with having the best interpretation of the Bible. Well, I think a lot of religions claim that anyway.
Yeah.
But my father did take me to his temple, and I did participate a lot. And then eventually my father did stop going to his temple for some reason, which I still have doubts. I really don't understand why he stopped. Well, my mom used this opportunity to then take me to her church.
And how
So
old were you? How old were you when
I
your
think,
dad stopped going to temple?
well, I think I was around 10. Yeah, I
Okay.
think I was around 10 years old. And then,
And
yeah.
I had another question. This when they would sit around and pass the mic around, were they asking the questions or were they uh, passing the mic around to people like to you or
Well,
other people in the?
no, the thing is that they have this, like, the way they organize these things is that the person in charge, they're reading the Bible, and they have these magazines that have the information they're gonna discuss each Sunday or Saturday or whatever day they're getting this is happening. So they have the topic, they're discussing it, and then when they have these like comprehension questions that they do, so people they can make sure that people are understanding what they're talking about, and then they
Oh,
pass the mic so the people have the chance to express whether or not they understood and answer the question that's being asked.
so it's basically a verbal
It's a
test.
school. Yeah, it's a test. It's practically like a school. You go there to learn.
I imagine. Were you? How did you feel when you were in those groups? Were you stressed out?
No, because they're obviously they encourage children to participate. And I, I I do remember sometimes be feeling bored because they were these long conversations on details on the Bible. But the chances that I did participate, I always liked it because, well, when you're a kid and you get a mic, you feel extremely excited, obviously.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did. I do have fond memories of my me and my father going there, and I also remember like receiving chocolates from old ladies and hugs and whatever. And they do sing before when they start this. They at the beginning and the end they sing, so it was pretty beautiful actually.
So it was a good experience then.
Yeah, it was a good
Yeah.
experience. I don't remember actually having like a negative experience if I that I actually remember.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother, like I was saying, my mother used this opportunity that my dad stopped taking me to his temple. So she started taking me to her church, which is the local church, the Catholic church where I live right now. And yeah, I we went there for a lot of years. We read the Bible, we a normal mass like any other Catholic church. And like I said, I was baptized, I did communion, I did confirmation. So I went to Sunday school so I could learn about Jesus and about Jesus's love and whatever. And I was a pretty good uh, Catholic student, if I can say so, if I do say so myself. I do remember my Sunday school teacher. She just loved me because I always participated. I always wanted to bring interesting topics to discuss, and well, I was always a willing student. Um, and yeah, my mother, like my mother always saw that I had this interest in religion, and my family, at least my family, which is closest to me, is majorly Catholic. So, and since my family is Hispanic, when people die, we pray for them. And I was the only child. I was one of the few people that actually knew how to pray for dead family members. So everybody did kind of look up to me in the sense that they kind of saw this figure of this young boy that loved God so much and that he knew how to pray. So I think I did have I did they were pretty satisfied with me in the sense that they thought that I was this good model of a
Yeah.
Christian boy.
Well, and you said something that kind of interested me. So you said that you knew how to pray for the dead. So I come from an evangelical conservative background, and there wasn't a specific prayer that I remember
Yeah.
reciting. In your experience, was there a specific prayer that you were supposed to pray as a Catholic for people
Wow.
when they
Yeah.
die?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we actually Catholics do have these like established prayers that we give, at least in Puerto Rico. Yeah, we give the dead. It's a procedure practically. In Spanish it's called the El Santo Rosario, which is like the Holy Rosary. So
Okay.
like that's why people call Catholics like rosary shakers. I really don't remember the term, but yeah, Catholics are like distinguished because they use rosaries. And yeah, we have, at least my cousin, who's like the master in this in praying for the dead. I learned from her, and it's a really long procedure. Like we have, it's really structured. We would start singing, and then we would say different prayers, and then we would recite like one one. In Spanish it's called Padre Nuestro, which is like this special prayer that you give God and Jesus specifically, and then we will recite 50 Hail Marys. 50,
Whoa.
50, yeah, because I think the rosary has 5 sets of 10 beads, and each bead is supposed to represent one Hail Mary. So you would end up when you finish the rosary, you would end up reciting 50 Hail Marys. So
Wow.
you had to recite 50 Hail Marys. So you had that long process, and added to that, you have other prayers that you had to add, and the singing. And then at the end, we would just eat food and discuss about the dead person's life and whatever. So it is a procedure. That's what I called it, a procedure.
So at your youngest, when were you doing these prayers? What's the earliest you remember?
I think around 12 years old.
Okay.
I think actually, if I'm not mistaken, the first time I prayed was for, I think, one of my cousins' deaths. My grandma's uh, brothers. My grandma does have a lot of brothers and sisters. So when they died, we everybody would just come together to pray. So yeah, praying was pretty off. It happened pretty often because we did have a lot of old people that died. So yeah, it was a typical common thing.
And on your mom's side, everybody was pretty. It was pretty Catholic.
Yeah, I thanks thankfully here in Puerto Rico, I think that a lot of people that are Catholic are pretty moderate Christians. Yeah, they're not like really fundamentalists.
That's
Even though
good.
I do have, it's awesome actually. but but my mom, my mom's family, my family on her side is completely Catholic. But I don't have any like misgivings. I don't have any bad experience specifically with my mom's side of a family. So
Hmm.
I'm thankful for that. I haven't actually. A lot of them do know that I'm not right now, that I'm not religious, but they. I don't think a lot of them don't have an idea that I'm actually an atheist. It's not that I'm in the closet or anything. I just don't mention it unless it's completely necessary. At least
Right.
my aunt, all my aunts, my mother, my grandmother, and my cousins, either they know that I'm an atheist or they have an idea that I'm not religious in any sense. So at least they know. Most of my close family does know.
Close family knows. So you said that you were a good Catholic student. You know, you were really
Yeah.
eager and interested, and you were skilled at praying for the dead, and so you were really engaged with it. So as an evangelical, having a personal relationship with God is kind of a big deal or a big part of it. How did you
Yeah.
view your interactions with God or your relationship with God? Did you view it as a relationship?
Well, obviously, most of these things were happening when I was a child. So, you have to measure what it is that you can actually call a relationship with God when you're a child, because you do your understanding of the Bible and what most religions call a good relationship with God is kind of not developed yet.
Uh-huh.
But I do remember that when I was little, I did pray sometimes for God to help me, and my mother did read to me a lot of like Christian bedtime stories. So I think I had a reasonable relationship with what I thought was God when I was growing up. I prayed when I thought it was necessary, but I didn't actually like pray every night. I think most of the times I just like did like the sign of the cross
Mm-hmm.
and I just went to sleep. But I did acknowledge at that time that I thought that there was a God and that he existed and that he watched over us and protected us, and he was
Yeah.
the this origin of moral truth and moral high ground. So yeah, I think I had a pretty good understanding of what God was, at least for a child standard.
Yeah, it sounds like it to me. It sounds like you were a really good Catholic child.
Yeah. Yeah. uh at least my family considered that to be the
Yeah.
case. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there someone or something that you think influenced your faith the most?
My grandmother, my grandmother from my mother's side, she's pretty Catholic. I mean, she's not like fundamentalist, but she does have this relationship with God, well, what she calls her God.
Yeah.
And I always admired her because obviously she's my grandmother, and what grandson wouldn't admire her grandmother? But she always prayed when people died, and I think she was the biggest influence for me, and she still is. Well, she is still my major influence, and when it comes to being Catholic for her. So yeah, I think my mother was my biggest influence. My grandmother, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, up until kind of this point in your childhood, is there anything else that's significant about this time in your life?
Well, at least this age that I'm referring to, like this period between 10 and 12 years old, I'm still either in elementary school or middle school. So yeah, nothing crucial and important actually happened during this time.
Okay.
The important stuff did happen in high school.
Okay.
Yeah. So when eventually I reached high school, which is a year younger for my age because I got skipped a grade, but when I reached high school, this is when I actually started being more involved in philosophy and thinking. I love chess, so chess is a pretty logical game. So yeah, I started thinking about the Bible and how I there was a lot of contradictions, and I didn't think that a lot of it was true, and or at least I didn't think it was completely true. In high school, at least for the second year high school, is when I actually considered myself an atheist, and I
Oh,
started
wow.
getting involved about learning through YouTube. I think YouTube is one of the best resources people should use to understand a lot of this philosophy. There's a lot of great videos and channels on YouTube that people should check out.
Cool.
But I could maybe mention them later. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, in high school is when my this new idea of me being an atheist I think is actually born.
Yeah.
And I remember there was this other student that studied with me that was an atheist, and he did say it. So I think he was actually the only one that I actually recognized being an atheist.
So up until this point, so actually rewinding a little bit, do you remember a specific time? And I think you kind of mentioned like when you were reading the Bible, but was there a specific time when you remember doubts starting to creep in about Catholicism, about Christianity?
There was a moment when my mom, when I went to church with my mom, sometimes my mom would mention things that I thought were a little bit illogical, even for a kid my age. You can kind of recognize when things don't make sense. A lot of them were based on the idea that this piece of bread they give you, the host, the transformation of it in becoming Jesus Christ is flesh and blood. I was always interested in science, so I obviously I didn't think that it was a physical and a physical transformation. And I did criticize a lot of things that I did see and consider to be wrong in the Catholic Church. children getting raped, and people saying that the Catholic Church wasn't being inclusive with women, and so I did at my age hear about these discussions, and my mother was always open to having these discussions. She thought that, and obviously a lot of these doubts do come because there was this conflict between what I was taught in my father's church and my father's temple versus what my mother was teaching me in Catholicism. So the Jehovah's Witnesses that said that when life ends, that we're gonna come back to earth because God is gonna practically like do this spring cleaning, and he's gonna rid all bad things from earth, and people
I like
are gonna
that spring cleaning.
spring cleaning. So people are supposed to come back, and God is gonna bring them back to live to earth when he fixes earth. And Catholics think that souls go to heaven. So, and most Christians do believe that. So I saw these discrepancies between what the Jehovah's Witnesses consider to be true and what my mother and her church considered to be true. So I think I was kind of trapped in this middle ground between I didn't know what to believe. So I was kind of neutral in these senses. So I didn't actually like form these ideas that I said, oh, the answer is, yeah, we all go to heaven. I just didn't know what the answers were. I was kind of confused.
Okay, yeah. So you're hearing two sort of different narratives about Christianity, and you didn't really, I guess, have a whole lot of time to, or just didn't get to the point where you were trying to process it and decide, well, what do I think? You didn't really get to that point with those things.
Exactly.
So you'd mentioned a couple things. One was the doctrine, the Catholic doctrine that the host or the cracker or whatever turns into
the wafer.
Yeah, the wafer. Yeah, it was saltine crackers in the church I grew up in.
Okay.
That Catholics believe, and for people who may not be Catholic, can you explain that belief and why that was something that was interesting or something that you questioned?
Yeah, well, the priest when you go to church, the priest says this incantation, where he's saying that this is the blood and the body of Christ, and during that incantation, it symbolically, at least for Catholics, it's supposed to be literal, but the host, it becomes actually Jesus's blood and flesh, which. And for me, it always sounded kind of ridiculous, because wouldn't that be kind of like cannibalism? But anyway.
Kind of is. Well, yeah, like literally.
It is.
Yeah, because to Protestants, it was a symbol. It was a symbol of his blood and his flesh. So, but for you, as a Catholic, you're learning this is actually his flesh.
Well, the incantation that the priest said actually said that it was the actual blood and body of Christ. So yeah, they were pretty clear on that fact.
Yeah.
It was so interesting just to see people get up and then eat the wafer. It was you had to get in this long line just for the priest to give you this wafer. Yeah. And they didn't even taste good. so yeah, that was kind of that's kind of how it works in the Catholic Church regarding that dogma.
Yeah, and then you'd said some other things, and one of them was you said that these discussions would come up, for instance, about like child abuse within the church. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, I mean, not actually in the church, but I do remember my family in several occasions. They mentioned that they were criticizing like priests, saying they're not really good Catholics, or that they're raping children. And actually, there was a case fairly recently here in Puerto Rico that was tried about children being raped by this priest in one of the municipalities of the island. So it wasn't a discussion that happened inside the church. It was more criticism that I heard from my family members.
Okay, and then what? Maybe not that particular subject, but was there a certain discussion about something that made you start to, other than what we've talked about, that made you start kind of like, that doesn't make sense, or I don't know if I believe that? Was there any moment like that you can remember?
I don't think so. Like my family actually didn't, even though they did mention a lot of religious things often, but I don't remember them saying something that I would like directly say I was opposed to it, or that
Hmm.
I didn't actually understand. I think that I never had the discussion. Those discussions were I had them when I did end up regarding myself as an atheist. So I had those discussions later in life,
Yeah.
not in that moment, not in that moment.
Now you had mentioned earlier that you started to read the Bible in high school.
Well, yeah, and I did start reading the Bible, and when my like I said, when my father took me to his temple, we did read the Bible. So I do remember, like, anybody that can open the Bible and just read Genesis, you can probably just find in just a few pages a lot of things that you, at least more normal people, regard as weird or just factually wrong.
Yeah.
And I did, at least the Jehovah's Witnesses did teach me that this idea that you have to read the Bible really symbolically, because not a lot of things in the Bible are literal.
So
And
you were being told that by.
yes, yes, and well, even to recently when Jehovah's Witnesses come and visit me to my home, typical from them.
Yeah.
And I love talking with them actually, and discussing their arguments. They always say that you have to read the Bible in a symbolic way most of the time, because if you take, for example, the creation myth story, at least for Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't believe that the earth and the heavens were created in 7 days. They just think that the days is like a word that represents a longer period of time.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So I kind of forgot the question you
Well,
were
no, no,
asking.
that's okay. That's all
Okay.
interesting stuff. But I wanted to kind of ask, what motivated you or got you interested in reading the Bible more in depth, or.
Yeah, but what at least when I was younger, my mother and my grandpa did have these like old Bibles that I always found to be like, obviously I they looked like they had value because they were old. So I always liked to read. So I think, but not there. Even though I did read a lot, I think the biggest influence, at least in understanding the Bible, did come from History Channel. Actually,
Oh, cool.
History Channel. Well, when I was growing up, I watched a lot of TV, and most of the programs I was watching were Discovery Channel, History Channel, educational things, and
Yeah.
luckily, History Channel did always had these, at least for there's times of the year that a lot of Christians, there's a lot of things that are discussed in History Channel regarding religion and Christianity. So there was a lot of series and programs where they would address the historical facts in the Bible, or they would talk about Jesus's history, or how the this perception of hell is addressed in the Bible, and specifically in Christianity and the different sects of Christianity. So History Channel was this huge influence in my life, because they had all these shows that would discuss and talk about these topics, and I loved just watching and learning and seeing these professors talk about hell and what happens and what other ancient cultures regarded to be the afterlife. So that was, I think, contributed largely to my perception of religion.
So not only did that kind of pique your interest and get you interested in the Bible, but do you think that it contributed to you kind of,
Being skeptical, you mean?
yeah, yeah,
Well, yeah, because when you see these historical facts, because a lot of these programs do acknowledge that they can't take this all in fact, because there are not a lot of facts you can base the Bible. Most of the time, there's a lot of incoherences, or things don't completely make sense. So the programs were pretty clear in saying, oh, you have to interpret these parts, or we don't have evidence for this. So yeah, those things did influence me being a little bit more open-minded and skeptical and about these topics.
Okay, and at this time in your life, we're talking really early high school years, right? Or
Yes,
maybe just
yes.
before, kind of.
Yeah.
So you had said that you basically realized you were an atheist second year of high school, but I want to know, like, right up to that point, was there anything that was keeping you hanging on to Christianity? Was there
I know.
one? Yeah.
I think it was more of a, it's a cultural thing. So I just, if I didn't have a reason to question it, then I wouldn't just throw it in the trash anyway.
Uh huh.
So I think it was just a belief that I had, but I never actually questioned. So I just held on to it, loosely, because I wasn't a fundamentalist, as I mentioned, but
Yeah.
I just had the beliefs. I just didn't. I still hadn't had the chance to question it. So I think there's a lot of people that do believe in God or Christians or whatever other religion they are, but they're religious because they were brought up in that religion and they just haven't had the chance to question their beliefs.
Okay, so you started to question early high school. Was there a
Uh,
specific question or doubt that you remember being the final thing that kind of put you over the top?
well, I don't think so. I mean, there was a lot of things that I just saw were not true. No, I maybe if I had to mention something, I think it would be evolution, because, well, I me being scientifically inclined, I to in this moment in my life, I already believed that evolution was true. So I did have this discrepancy with fixing this relationship in my mind between evolution being true and God creating creatures.
Uh huh.
So I think that did actually force a little bit of my opinion on the fact of my beliefs in religion. But other than that, I didn't have other like critical ideas that it promoted me becoming an atheist.
What was there a moment of realization? Was there a time when you were like, yeah, I think I'm an atheist, or yeah, I don't think I'm Christian?
At least my process of becoming an atheist wasn't, there's a lot of people that just fall out of religion and they have these critical things that happen in your life, or so. But I like these. My life has been pretty okay, pretty well. So I
Yeah, that's
haven't
okay.
had I haven't had that, that moment where I said, wow, I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do with my life? I didn't have those sad moments, I guess.
Well, that's
But
okay, but yeah, was there? But when did you realize? I know you were early high school age, but do you remember around? Do you remember specifically when it switched in your mind from I don't identify as a Catholic anymore?
you know, I don't think I actually that
Not
me
really.
taking no, I don't think so. And even if that were the case, I think these first years I wasn't keen on just like removing this label of me being a Catholic. I just
Kind of went
regarded
along with
myself.
it.
Yeah, I just went along with it. So yeah, I wouldn't say I removed religion from my life completely and that
Yeah,
I was just openly atheistic about
yeah.
it. No.
Well, that's okay though. I mean, everybody has a different experience, right? And I envy
Yeah.
your experience because when I was your age, I was just about to make a whole bunch of mistakes.
Yeah.
So, no,
Well,
yeah,
um
everybody's different. And I like hearing the different stories. Some are tragic and horrible and sad, and then they get better, and others are just kind of like, yeah, one day I just was like, yeah, I don't believe it.
I think in high school the only oh, I had a biology teacher who was a Christian in my high school, I'm talking like third year being in high school. So that's when I actually started calling myself an atheist. And she knew I was an atheist because I had that conversation with her. She was a cool teacher and I still regard her as one of the best teachers I had. Her name is Goli, Gloria. So yeah, just a shout out to her. And there were these circumstances in my school. Obviously, people here are mostly Christian, and these teachers in my high school, I'm talking like third year high school. So this probably
Hmm.
happened between 2013, 14.
Okay.
So these teachers in my high school started organizing these worship. activities, and they would gather, like, I think once a week to worship God in the middle of the high school,
Oh,
which is a
wow.
public. It was a pub. It was practically it was really clear that was Christian, because they would mention Jesus and they would bring music and they would dance and everything. It was a pretty clear Christian spectacle.
Yeah.
And me being an atheist at that time, I obviously felt a little bit uncomfortable, because I knew it was illegal to do that. I was already understanding that in public school you're not supposed to promote religious views, that, at least that, not that directly.
Yeah.
And I got a little bit mad, because I do remember myself being in the library when one of these activities was going on, and I told the librarian that, oh, I'm gonna just sit here for a while, because I don't want to be outside, because they're worshiping God over there. They're not supposed to be doing that, because that's illegal.
Yeah.
And then she just said, well, but she just didn't understand why I was making a huge fuss about it. She told me, oh, if you don't like it, or you just don't feel uncomfortable, you can just move to another part of the school, because then over there you're not going to be able to listen to it. And I just looked at her with this face, like, why should I be the one to move? These guys are not supposed to be even doing this in the first place.
Yeah.
And I did eventually write a letter complaining, and I got people to sign the letter. I got like 30 students to back up
Wow.
my complaint. Yeah.
That's awesome. How old were you?
Around, let me see,
Or what grade?
I was in 11th or 12th grade, so I was probably, well, I'm 19 right now. I was probably 17.
Yeah, so this is only a couple years ago, but you were
Yeah.
a junior, senior in high school, and you
Yeah.
were able to get 30 of your peers to sign this
Yeah.
letter. That's great.
Yeah. Thanks to the emo community, especially. But there were a lot of students that were either Jewish or whatever, that they felt uncomfortable. So I got people to sign the letter, and I gave the letter to the director of the school, who is Mormon,
Oh, wow.
and she completely agreed with me. She told me, yeah, you're completely right. But the worry that she had was that she didn't want to break up this good feeling that people had in participating in the activity. And I was able to compromise. I just said, I don't mind them doing the activity. It just has to be neutral. They can't be worshiping Jesus right there, like mentioning Jesus and whatever. So eventually, after that, I addressed one of the organizers, one of the teachers who was organizing the activity, and I told her, hey, I understand that you're religious and whatnot, but you have to understand that you're breaking the law. In public schools and Puerto Rico and the United States, you're not supposed to do like religious activities, because you're influencing the children who are studying there. So, and she kind of took it badly, and she told me, oh, that if we're not allowed to do the activity here in school, we're just going to do it in some public area outside of the school, and they will eventually find out that their activities they're going on outside of the school, and they're going to move over there.
So how many people would attend these Christian meetings?
A lot of the school, but I mean, schools here in Puerto Rico tend to be small, so students get bored. So most of the students would just go there because they didn't have a lot of things
Like
to do.
dozens and dozens of kids, or hundreds?
I know, not hundreds, because
It's a high school, right? Okay, sorry.
It's a high school. So yeah, in here schools tend not to be that big. But at least in that school where this was happening, there was easily 60 or 70 people there. So the participation was substantial.
And your high school was probably several hundred.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was like 200 students easily there, or more.
Okay, yeah, or more. So 60 is kind of a big chunk of those kids.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that was the major problem that I faced in high school.
Yeah, that's a great story. I was gonna make a comment about that. I wonder and I'll get your take on this. What do you think that organizer who didn't take it very well, what do you think she would have thought if 60 or 70 of the students at your school were doing the same exact thing, but they were praying to Allah instead?
Oh yeah, obviously I told the director that when she listened, she was discussing the case with me. I told her, yeah, you're Mormon, like you should be promoting a more inclusive area. And I told my biology teacher that I mentioned earlier, I told her, what if what would be their reaction if some Satanist went and did something similar in the middle of the high school, or even me that I'm an atheist? What would be their reaction if I went there and I did something that was like obviously atheistic? So obviously they're not going to react pretty well. So
Right.
I knew that they weren't promoting obviously a inclusive area. It was a Christian activity.
Yeah, and it looks, because it's in a public school, it can be perceived that the school is endorsing the activity.
Well, it was endorsing it because all the teachers and all the authority figures there were participating in it, most of them.
So what ended up happening? Did they end up stopping, or?
Eventually, luckily when I graduated, it just stopped. I guess they just stopped doing it for some reason. I don't know, but I think it did have to do a little bit with me writing that letter because, but I think that it was mostly about the music. They had these musicians that would play there, and they were also students. So when they graduated, they didn't have anybody to play the guitar or whatever. So I think that's probably the reason why they stopped doing it.
That's so funny. Well, that's good. I mean, yeah, but you made an impact, I'm sure, and I'm sure
Yeah,
there's some people that were.
yeah. My teachers, at least this teacher that gave me English class. Oh yeah, they do remind me. They remember me fondly for being the atheist student,
Because you
and
were vocal.
yeah, I was vocal,
That's awesome.
and I one of these teachers that I have these both of those teachers that were organizing. I have them on Facebook, and I do have discussions with them, and I do try to argue, present my arguments and reason with them, but at least they're not capable of just participating in logical arguments.
And I wonder if they don't take it as well if it's coming from a student, because maybe they feel like they're the authority figure.
Yes, and which is I think so stupid. I don't know. I just and it's I think it's amazing how teachers that they're supposed to be the more logical people, at least that you would find as a student, tend to be a little bit more illogical than you think.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So when you think about, I know that your deconversion, so to speak, wasn't extreme, and there wasn't this big moment. But when you think back on being a child and being very devout, and you were you were praying, you knew the prayers really well, you were a good Catholic kid. When you think about that version of yourself, and then you think about who you are now, an atheist, and now you're in college, what about you stayed the same through that big change in your life?
My love for science.
So even from a young age, you had that interest in science.
I was well, I wouldn't even call myself the typical. I was exceedingly scientific. I was a biology freak. I went out in nature and I would catch insects and animals and preserve them in jars and whatever. I was a biology freak, totally. And I loved animals and understanding the universe and cosmology. So I was pretty deeply into science, and I still am. That's why I'm studying right now chemistry.
You're big into science, and the word that came to my mind was curiosity.
Yes,
You're curious
curiosity.
about your world and the things around you.
Yes,
That's cool.
completely.
Well, when you think back on the Christian version of yourself, what
Huh.
do you think about that person now that you're an atheist?
I don't have negative comments of myself. At least because I wasn't, like I said earlier, I was never fundamentalist, so I don't have critical beliefs that I feel repulsed by right now. I don't
Well, that's
have like
okay. Yeah, it can be
yeah.
positive.
Yeah, I just think I was, it was a result that I was in a environment that led me to be Christian, so it wasn't my fault. I was just
Yeah.
brought up in it.
Yeah. Well, what do you like best about being an atheist?
Being honest about what I believe, and that it doesn't have this dogma and these, il- well, unless you're a militant atheist, but well, anyway, if people can be militant about anything. I just feel like I don't have to be under. I feel free of what Christopher Hitchens will call the supreme North Korea, but the Christopher Hitchens will call the heaven this constant constantly being monitored by God as this North Korea situation where God was like the supreme
Like,
being that could just it was like a prison.
yeah, like
Christopher
an
Hitchens
overlord or
yeah,
big
overlord.
brother. Yeah.
So I just feel like free, and I do think, and I find solace, and I find enlightenment and happiness in humanistic values and virtues that I think all humans being have, but they just they think that human virtues and human goodness is comes from religion, which I completely consider to be false.
What are some of your humanistic values and virtues, and where do you think they come from, if they're not from a divine being?
Yeah, I think most of these things just come out as a result of obviously evolution and being social creatures. So I think morality can be a touchy feely kind of subject, but at the end of the day, morality does come from humans, and it does vary depending on where you are and the people who are involved in that community. So I think the best virtues of humans are, being open-minded, curiosity, being interested in what other people are going through, and combating suffering. And I think that that's why I'm a secular humanist most of all, because I think that secular humanism, as a progressive philosophy, does encompass this message of humanity and secularism that I think is critical if we're going to promote a logical, scientific, and open-minded society that is respectful to all of its constituents and that wants to progress to a better form of itself.
That's awesome. I love that answer. That's really great.
Thanks.
Open-minded, curiosity, combating suffering. Those are all such great values. That's really cool.
Yes.
So, is there something that you can think of that you have learned or experienced in your life that maybe you wouldn't have if you were still a Christian?
Yeah. Well, luckily, I've had the chance to get involved with all these groups that I mentioned before here, secularist groups in Puerto Rico. So I'm involved with Secular Humanists of Puerto Rico, and Eva Quiñones, the president of that group, is my mentor practically. I thank Eva because she has taught me so much about how to be an activist in Puerto Rico, and a lot of the things I've learned, a lot of the even though my activism is just getting started, it's been like a year or two. I've had the chance to go recently. I was when you contacted me, I was participating as a speaker as SSACon. It was a annual conference of Secular Student Alliance
Nice.
in Columbus, Ohio. So
Cool.
I got the chance to travel over there and see what activism in the secular community is over there. Being in Puerto Rico, you don't get to participate in what in the mainland U.S. happens over there. So I got to see that the problems in activism are more pronounced in other places, and that the problems that we face are not just in Puerto Rico. And I've gotten the chance to learn how to be a better activist, how to address these situations, how to converse with people, the arguments that are more appropriate depending on the situation and the type of person you want to converse with.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that being an activist and being exposed to these new ideas has helped me to be a more open human being, a human being that does understand where other people are come from when they are Christian and they don't understand my viewpoint. I have seen a lot of bad comments, at least in Twitter, because I'm the person who's in charge with the social media aspect of these groups. So I get to see a lot of politicians, especially Puerto Rico. For all of you out there, if you want to learn about Puerto Rico's politicians who are practically theocrats and promote religion here, there's these awful politicians called the first one is the speaker for the House of Representatives. His name is Carlos Johnny Mendez, and he decreed the House of Representatives decreed a 40-day period of fasting and prayer throughout all the island, which these organizations were fighting against because it's completely unconstitutional, because the Constitution of Puerto Rico clearly establishes, it says the precise words, there will be complete separation of church and state. The Constitution of the U.S. is a little bit more vague, doesn't have those precise words, even though Thomas Jefferson, mentioned them. But the Puerto Rican Constitution does say establishes a complete separation of church and state. And these politicians they just don't respect the separation. And there's another politician called Maria Milagros Charboniel, better known or called as Tata Charboniel. She has promoted legislation and bills that are anti-LGBT, and they, at least recently, there were these bills that could be used, they could be manipulated to justify discrimination. So we are fighting here in Puerto Rico against a religious minority who just don't care about the Constitution, and they just want to promote their religion. Actually, Eva Quiñones, she has actually heard them say that the Bible goes first and then the Constitution. And there's actually this program, this radio program called, the title is Without Separation of Church and State. And this radio program invites politicians, and the president of the Senate has participated in the program. Another senator has participated. Pastors go there. So I think it's a disrespectful, inconsiderate action from these politicians where they're promoting the violation of the separation of church and state, but they purely want to promote Christianity here. And they just don't care about their perception in the eyes of the people. And most of the people here in Puerto Rico just don't care. They just think that, it's okay as long as they're promoting God. Most people have never even read the Constitution here in Puerto Rico.
Well, and I think the thing that they don't think about, which I know you're well aware of, is if all of a sudden you guys had an influx of Muslim immigrants and then they got into politics, and the next thing you know, they were saying they wanted you to pray 5 times a day. They were decreeing a prayer, 5 times. I mean, all of a sudden, these people who were like, it's not that big of a deal, would get it.
Yes, they would get completely pissed. They just don't understand that. And they obviously understand it. They just manipulate it to their advantage.
That's true.
I do think that it's important to, these politicians are just manipulating these legislations to promote their religion. And it's a really critical situation. I know that over there in the States, you're facing Trump and whatever, and all. Things are horrible all around the world.
Sure.
But over there in the United States, at least you have, organizations that are big enough to combat these legislations. But here in Puerto Rico, we're still in baby steps. So we are suffering from being trampled by these politicians to a great degree. And we don't have we don't have the money to pay lawyers to combat these things. So we are suffering here a lot, and they just don't care about the minorities here.
It sounds like you have a big need for secular organizations or for support of those secular organizations.
We do.
Well, I'm really glad that you started the group that you did, and it's good to hear that there's other groups within Puerto Rico that are also, starting to thrive and grow.
Yes.
So when you think back on the fact that you went from Catholic to atheist, and I mean this in a positive way, what are you most proud of?
I think I'm proud of, I wouldn't call it being proud of. I feel relieved that I don't have to get wake up early to go to mass on Sundays, I think. But I do think I'm proud of me opening my mind and being able to question authority figures when they do say things that are just flat out wrong. So I feel proud of myself for being open-minded enough to come out of this, I think, delusion, as Dawkins would call it, a delusion, and coming out of it in a pretty positive way.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like it to me. You seem like a really positive person and like
Yeah,
self-confident. Yeah.
I'm pretty self-confident and I'm pretty funny. So I just try to be an upkeep. I try to keep myself as positive as possible. At least I don't have a lot of reasons to be sad. And even if I did, why would I just have that in my mind? We have to just move on with the blows that life gives us.
Yeah. Well, is there anything that we haven't discussed about your entire experience that you think's important?
No, I mean, I think we've actually covered a lot of it, but I just want to, just to give it maybe a little bit of an ending to my life story.
Yeah, yeah.
I do think that more specifically the group in my campus. So my group, I just want to thank my fellow student leaders in my group. They are fantastic people, especially like the one I mentioned, the Secretaria Carla, the secretary. She's the one who tends to be vigilant enough to keep me in my controlled state, because I do get to tend to be a little bit more. I get a little bit agitated when I get excited about stuff. So she keeps me a little bit more controlled. And I want to thank the advisors for the group. The first one is called Dr. Aiko Marie Guzman. She's a woman. She teaches organic chemistry at my campus. And the second one teaches humanities, and his name is Matthew Landers. He's a great guy, and he has to be one of the most sarcastic and funny people I know. And hopefully we're gonna keep on doing a lot of good activities. We already did a conference that, like I mentioned earlier, more than 100 people attended, about separation of church and state. We were gonna do a sexual diversity conference, and we always try to promote the LGBT causes. Recently, the UPR, the University of Puerto Rico, had this strike for 2 months. So we were out of the university for 2 months because a lot of people. I don't know if you guys know about this. You should. Puerto Rico is in an economical debt crisis.
I heard. Yeah, I think I've heard about that. Like it's on the news and stuff. Yeah.
We are our government is bankrupt practically. So the university went on strike for 2 months. So that kind of killed our activities during that time. I plan to continue informing people, being more dynamic, being more modern, because we have to keep up with the movements and be more, I think, social and more sensitive to how people are reacting on social media. Yeah. So hopefully we can maintain this group, keep giving the students what they want, some interactive and interesting information and activity that they're gonna like.
Well, I hope that continues for you guys too. I hope it just keeps getting better and keeps growing. Well, I started this podcast for the person out there who is a recently deconverted Christian. Is there any encouragement or piece of guidance that you would want to give that person, or that you could give that person? If I could just say a few things about what I think is important for people to keep in mind when this happens, if you're going through this in your life, you should always keep in mind that whatever it is that you end up believing, I personally don't feel bad for people that are religious. If that makes you happy, whatever. I do have a problem with, the facts and whatever it is, if it's true or not. But I think that you should always be open-minded. Investigating and learning should always be part of the process. Don't just
think that you know everything. So keep learning. Read a lot about philosophy because that helps a lot. Use YouTube, obviously. Um, Check out some channels on YouTube that are great. And I think that people that are atheists or secularists have this obligation to come out of the closet. I always say in Spanish, habla porque no puede hablar, which translates to speak out for the people who cannot speak out, you know? So if you can come out as an atheist, or if you're able to be more open about it, do so, because that is just going to help other people understand and feel better with themselves. And we can't be a movement that is going to be we can't keep ourselves in the closet. We have to be more open, destigmatize the issue. So I just want to tell people they have to be strong and to try their best just to keep themselves positive, and don't think for a moment that just because you don't have God in your life that your life is meaningless. As Richard Dawkins would say, life itself doesn't have a meaning. The meaning comes from what you give it, So everybody's going to have an individual purpose in their lives. It's just a matter of you pursuing it. So being positive, being open-minded, investigating, reading are the things that I would recommend for everybody.
Well, and I think you're walking the walk, because you said, people need to speak out for those who can't speak for themselves, for those who are still kind of hidden atheists that can't talk about it in front of their families. You're being that voice for them. So thank you for doing that,
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, what is one resource that you can recommend for someone deconverting? And I know you know a million, but yeah.
Wow, there's a lot of them. Well, obviously the Bible. The Bible should be the first one.
Read that, and you'll deconvert in a second. Yeah.
Yeah, but the Bible, you should. People criticize Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens for being a little bit militant, but you should check them out, read about them. There's a lot of great channels on YouTube, like Jacqueline Glenn, who's a YouTuber.
Jacqueline Glenn?
Yeah, Jacqueline Glenn. She's awesome.
Okay.
You can check out Hemin Metal, the Friendly Atheist, on YouTube. I always say you should read old philosophical writings. You should check out Pascal's Wager. You should check out Inquiry Concerning Human Knowledge from, I think it was David Hume who wrote that. Obviously, you should read The God Delusion from Richard Dawkins, and reading science is always important. And I think those are most of the things that I would recommend, but there's a lot of them. There's a great channel that does discuss philosophy and YouTube, but whatever. You should just check those out, and you should just keep investigating from that.
Yeah, and for people who are in Puerto Rico, you already named several groups.
Yeah, the groups. Okay. First of all, my group for students is Secular Humanist Association, UPRM. So you could just check us on Twitter. On Twitter, we are. You could just search for the username. This is gonna be all in capital letters. It's SHA-UPRM. Now that's correct. You should check also Humanistas PR. So it's HUMANISTAS PR at Twitter. You could also check Humanistas Seculares de Puerto Rico. If you don't understand Spanish, you can just Google, translate on Google. It's Secular Humanists of Puerto Rico. You can just write that on Google, and it's gonna turn out the page. You can search for that on Facebook. We have a group. We're welcome to join. You can check out Atheistas de Puerto Rico, which is Atheists of Puerto Rico. There's also that they have a page. They have a Twitter. They have a Twitter account, I think, yes, and they have a group on Facebook, and those are the groups you should check out on Puerto Rico. Cool. And you could also add me if they want. Uh-huh. On Twitter, I am Gerardo, GERARDO, Geraldo 11345. So you can just add me on Twitter. You can talk to me, whatever. On Facebook, I'm Gerardo Miguel Rivera. So it's Gerardo Miguel. I don't know if people know how to.
Yeah, that's okay.
Miguel Rivera. So it's Rivera. So yeah, that's what I have to say about social media, I guess, for now.
No, that's perfect. Because I was just going to ask the best way to get hold of you, and it sounds like those are some great.
And you can write to me. My group's email is shaUPRM@gmail.com. So
Perfect.
you can write to us there, and we're always open, and we can refer you guys to whatever other resources you need. So yeah, that's pretty much all.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Gerardo, it has been a pleasure getting to know you, and I appreciate you being willing to come on and talk about your experience. It's been really really fun to hear, and it's neat to see all the stuff you're involved in, and it sounds like Puerto Rico is in good hands.
Hopefully, I'll try to promote more people to. I'm trying to get more hands to deal with the situation.
That's right, because we always need more. But yeah, it sounds like things are growing and going well there. So that's really great.
It is.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciated you giving me this chance and time to communicate my message, and I just hope that other people like the secularist message and unite to promote activism.
Thanks for listening to Voices of Deconversion. Be sure to join us next time by subscribing to the podcast. If you'd like to learn more, check out our newsletter at bodpodcast.com.